If you're watching this video right now, you're probably obsessing over every little thing your ex does, trying to figure out if there's any chance they still think about you. You're analyzing their social media posts, dissecting every word of that casual text they sent last week, asking mutual friends if they've mentioned your name. But here's what you need to understand. The most powerful signs that your ex's mind is changing, that they're starting to question their decision to leave you, are completely invisible. They're not the obvious things everyone tells you to look for. They're subtle, psychological shifts that are happening beneath the surface. And if you know what to look for, you can see them clear as day, even when your ex is trying desperately to hide them. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel is dedicated to helping you understand the psychology of attraction, navigate breakups, and make empowered decisions about your relationships. And if this video helps you today, please click that like button. It really helps us reach more people who are going through exactly what you're experiencing right now. So let's talk about what makes these 3 signs so different from everything else you've been told to watch for. Most people will tell you to look for the obvious stuff. Your ex reaching out and saying they miss you. Your ex liking all your Instagram posts. Your ex asking how you've been. And yes, those things can happen, but they're not the real indicators of psychological change. In fact, sometimes those obvious signs are just your ex testing the waters, making sure you're still available, keeping you as a backup option while they explore other possibilities. The 3 invisible signs I'm about to share with you are different because they reveal what's happening in your ex's subconscious mind, the part they can't control, the part that's processing the reality of losing you, whether they want to admit it or not. The first invisible sign that your ex's mind is changing is what I call the pattern disruption. This is when your ex suddenly breaks their established routine or behavior pattern in a way that seems random but is actually deeply connected to you. Let me explain how this works. After a breakup, most people fall into predictable patterns. Your ex might start going out more, posting on social media constantly, diving into work or hobbies, maybe even jumping into a rebound relationship. These patterns serve a psychological purpose. They're distraction mechanisms designed to avoid feeling the loss of you. They're your ex's way of convincing themselves that they made the right decision, that they're happier without you, that life is better now. But here's the thing. These patterns require constant mental energy to maintain. Your ex has to keep telling themselves the story that justifies the breakup. They have to keep reinforcing the narrative that you weren't right for them, that the relationship had to end, that they're better off alone or with someone else. And for a while, they can do this. They can maintain the facade. But then something shifts. You start noticing that your ex's behavior becomes inconsistent. Maybe they were posting on social media every single day and suddenly they go silent for a week. Maybe they were going out constantly and now they're staying home. Maybe they seemed super happy and energetic and now their energy has completely changed. This pattern disruption happens because your ex's subconscious mind is starting to break through their conscious defenses. The story they've been telling themselves is starting to crack. The distraction mechanisms aren't working anymore. And when those defenses start to fail, their behavior becomes erratic because they're internally conflicted. Part of them still wants to maintain the narrative that leaving was the right choice. But another part, the part they can't control, is starting to question everything. Now, here's what makes this sign invisible to most people. Your ex isn't going to announce this internal conflict. They're not going to post on social media saying, "I'm having second thoughts about the breakup." Instead, the conflict shows up in subtle behavioral changes that most people dismiss as random or unrelated. But if you understand what's happening psychologically, you can see it clearly. The pattern disruption is your ex's mind beginning to process the reality of the loss. It's the first crack in their psychological armor. And once that crack appears, it only gets bigger. The second invisible sign is what I call emotional leakage. This is when your ex accidentally reveals their true emotional state through micro behaviors they can't fully control. Let me give you some context. When your ex first left, they probably seemed very certain, very confident in their decision. They might have been cold, distant, matter-of-fact about the whole thing. They might have said things like, "I just don't feel the same way anymore," or "I need to focus on myself," or "We're just not compatible." And in that moment, they probably believed what they were saying. But here's what happens over time. As the reality of the breakup sets in, as the initial relief and freedom start to fade, your ex begins to experience emotions they didn't expect. Regret, nostalgia, loneliness, doubt. And these emotions are uncomfortable because they contradict the story your ex has been telling themselves. So what do? They try to suppress these emotions. They try to keep them hidden, both from you and from themselves. But emotions don't just disappear because we ignore them. They leak out in small, involuntary ways. This is where emotional leakage comes in. You might notice that when you do have contact with your ex, even brief contact, their tone or body language doesn't match their words. Maybe they say they're doing great, but their voice sounds tired or strained. Maybe they act casual and unbothered, but you catch them looking at you a little too long. Maybe they mention something from your past together, a memory, an inside joke, and for just a second, you see something in their expression: sadness, longing, regret. These micro-expressions and tonal shifts are emotional leakage. They're the moments when your ex's true feelings break through their carefully constructed facade. And here's why this is such a powerful sign. Emotional leakage is involuntary. Your ex can control what they say. They can control whether they reach out or not. But they can't fully control these micro-behaviors because they're driven by the subconscious mind. When you see emotional leakage, you're seeing the truth beneath the performance. You're seeing that your ex is not as okay as they're pretending to be. You're seeing that their mind is changing, that they're starting to feel the weight of what they've lost. Now, most people miss this sign because they're too focused on the words. They hear their ex say, "I'm fine, I've moved on," and they take it at face value. But if you pay attention to the nonverbal cues, the tone, the pauses, the you'll see a completely different story. You'll see someone who's struggling internally, someone whose mind is shifting even if they're not ready to admit it yet. The third invisible sign, and this is the most powerful one, is what I call the phantom reach. This is when your ex engages in behaviors that keep them connected to you indirectly without actually reaching out. Let me explain what this looks like. After a breakup, especially if you're doing no contact correctly, your ex loses direct access to you. They can't just text you whenever they want. They can't call you. They can't see you. And this creates a psychological void. Suddenly, someone who was a constant presence in their life is just gone. And that absence is louder than any presence ever was. So what does your ex do? They start engaging in what I call phantom reach behaviors. These are actions that create a sense of connection to you without requiring them to actually contact you directly. This might look like your ex watching all your Instagram stories even though they never like or comment. It might look like them asking mutual friends about you in casual conversation. It might look like them driving past places you used to go together. It might look like them listening to music you introduced them to, or watching shows you used to watch together. These behaviors serve a specific psychological function. They allow your ex to maintain a connection to you while still preserving their ego and their narrative that they made the right decision. They can tell themselves, "I'm not reaching out, I'm not chasing, I'm just curious, or I just happen to be in the area, or I just like this song." But the reality is, these phantom reach behaviors are driven by something much deeper. They're driven by the fact that your ex's mind is changing. They're starting to miss you. They're starting to wonder what you're doing, who you're with, whether you've moved on. They're starting to feel the loss in a way they didn't expect. And here's what makes the phantom reach so significant. It reveals that you're still occupying mental real estate in your ex's mind. They're not over you. They're not indifferent. They're actively seeking ways to feel close to you, even if it's just through these indirect behaviors. Now, the reason most people miss this sign is because it's not obvious. Your ex isn't announcing that they're watching your stories or asking about you. In fact, they're probably trying to be subtle about it. But if you pay attention, if you notice the patterns, you'll see it. You'll see that your ex is engaging with your life from a distance. And that engagement is a clear indicator that their mind is shifting. So now that you understand these three invisible signs, the pattern disruption, emotional leakage, and the phantom reach, let's talk about what they actually mean and what you should do when you see them. First, it's crucial to understand that these signs don't mean your ex is ready to come back. They don't mean your ex has had some grand epiphany and realized they made a mistake. What these signs mean is that your ex's psychological state is changing. The certainty they felt when they first left is starting to erode. The narrative they've been telling themselves is starting to crack. They're beginning to process the reality of losing you, and that process is uncomfortable for them. This is actually a critical phase, and how you respond to it will determine whether your ex continues down this path of questioning and regret, or whether they snap back into their old narrative and convince themselves again that leaving was the right choice. Here's what most people do wrong. They see one of these invisible signs. Maybe they notice their ex watching their stories, or they catch a hint of emotional leakage in a brief conversation, and they get excited. They think, this is it. They're coming back. So they reach out, they send a text, they like their ex's posts, they make themselves available. And what happens? The dynamic shifts immediately. Your ex gets the confirmation they were subconsciously seeking, the confirmation that you're still there, still available, still waiting. And once they have that confirmation, the anxiety they were feeling, the fear of losing you permanently, it disappears. They go right back to feeling secure in their decision because they know the safety net is still there. Instead, when you see these invisible signs, you need to do something counterintuitive. You need to stay the course. You need to maintain your boundaries, maintain your no contact if that's what you're doing, and continue focusing on your own growth and healing. Because here's the psychological truth. These invisible signs are just the beginning of your ex's journey from certainty to doubt. They're the first indicators that the loss is starting to register, but for that process to continue, for your ex to truly confront what they've lost, they need to keep feeling your absence. They need to keep experiencing the void. If you fill that void too early, if you make yourself available before your ex has fully processed the loss, you short-circuit the entire psychological process. Think about it this way. When your ex first left, they felt relief. They felt freedom. They felt like they made the right choice. But as time goes on and you maintain your absence, that relief starts to turn into something else. Curiosity, then concern, then anxiety, then fear. And it's that fear, that genuine fear of having lost you permanently, that creates the conditions for real change. The invisible signs you're seeing, the pattern disruption, the emotional leakage, the phantom reach. These are all indicators that your ex is moving through this psychological journey. They're transitioning from relief to loss, but they're not there yet. They're in the middle, in the uncomfortable space where their old narrative is breaking down, but they haven't fully accepted the new reality yet. Your job is not to rescue them from that discomfort. Your job is to let them sit in it. Let them feel it. Let them process it. Because that's the only way they'll truly understand what they've lost. That's the only way their mind will fully change from I made the right decision to I made a terrible mistake. Now, let's talk about timing, because this is where people get confused. How long does it take for these invisible signs to appear? And how long should you wait before responding to them? The honest answer is it varies dramatically depending on multiple factors. It depends on how long you were together, how deep the connection was, whether your ex is in a rebound relationship, whether they have a strong support system validating their decision, and most importantly, how consistently you've maintained no contact. If you've been rock solid with no contact, not responding to, not stalking their social media, not reaching out through mutual friends, these invisible signs typically start appearing between 3 weeks and 3 months. But if you've been inconsistent, if you've broken no contact multiple times, if you've shown that you're still available and waiting, these signs might not appear at all, or they might take 6 months, a year, or longer, because you keep resetting your ex's psychology back to the starting point. As for how long you should wait before responding, here's my guidance. Don't respond to the invisible signs themselves. These signs are not invitations for you to reach out. They're internal psychological shifts happening in your ex's mind. What you're waiting for is not an invisible sign. You're waiting for a visible, undeniable, vulnerable reach out from your ex. You're waiting for the moment when your ex can no longer contain their feelings and they reach out to you with genuine emotion, genuine vulnerability, genuine accountability. That's the moment when their mind has fully changed. That's the moment when they've moved from doubt to regret to genuine desire to make things right. The invisible signs are just telling you that the process has started. They're telling you that your no contact is working, that your ex's psychology is shifting, but they're not telling you it's time to act. Not yet. So what should you be doing while you're waiting for your ex's mind to fully change? This is the part that most people neglect, and it's the most important part of the entire process. You should be focusing on yourself, not as a strategy to get your ex back, but as a genuine commitment to your own growth and healing. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. Even if all three invisible signs are present, even if your ex's mind is changing, even if they eventually come back with genuine remorse and a desire to reconcile, that doesn't mean you should take them back. The question you need to be asking yourself is not, is my ex's mind changing? The question you need to be asking is, do I even want this person back in my life? And you can't answer that question honestly if you've spent the entire no contact period obsessing over your ex, waiting for signs, hoping for reconciliation. You can only answer that question if you've done the work to heal, to grow, to rediscover who you are outside of that relationship. So use this time wisely, go to therapy, reconnect with friends and family, pursue hobbies and passions you neglected during the relationship. Work on your physical health, your mental health, your career, your personal development. Build a life that's so fulfilling that your ex becomes a footnote in your story rather than the entire narrative. Because when you do that, something powerful happens. You stop looking for invisible signs. You stop obsessing over whether your ex is thinking about you. You stop checking their social media. You stop asking mutual friends about them. And ironically, that's when you become most attractive. That's when your ex, if they're paying attention, sees that you're not sitting around waiting for them. They see that you're thriving. They see that you're moving forward. And that creates more psychological impact than any strategy or game ever could. Let me share a real example of how this played out. I worked with a client named Marcus whose girlfriend of 4 years left him. She told him she needed space to figure out her life, that she wasn't sure about their future, that she needed to be alone. Marcus was devastated. For the first 2 weeks, he did everything wrong. He texted her constantly. He showed up at her apartment. He sent long emotional emails, and predictably, she pulled further away. Then Marcus found my content and committed to strict no contact, no texts, no calls, no social media interaction, nothing. For the first month, his ex seemed completely fine. She was posting on social media, going out with friends, living her best life. Marcus was tempted to break no contact multiple times, but he stayed strong. Then around week 5, Marcus started noticing the invisible signs. First, the pattern disruption. His ex, who had been posting constantly, suddenly went quiet on social media for almost 2 weeks. Then, emotional leakage. They ran into each other at a mutual friends event, and while his ex acted casual and said she was doing great, Marcus noticed her voice wavered when she asked how he was doing. He noticed she kept glancing at him throughout the night. Then, the phantom reach. Marcus noticed his ex was watching every single one of his Instagram stories, even though she never liked or commented on anything. She was also asking their mutual friends about him, trying to seem casual but clearly fishing for information. Marcus recognized these signs for what they were. His ex's mind was changing. But instead of reaching out, instead of breaking no contact, Marcus doubled down on his own growth. He started going to the gym regularly. He reconnected with old friends. He threw himself into a work project he'd been putting off. He started posting on social media, not to make his ex jealous, but to document his genuine progress and experiences. And then, about 3 months into no contact, his ex reached out, but it wasn't a casual, "Hey, how are you?" text. It was a long, vulnerable message. She talked about specific things she missed about him. She acknowledged the mistakes she made. She asked if they could talk, not because she wanted closure, but because she realized she'd made a terrible mistake and wanted to see if there was any chance they could work things out. That was the moment Marcus knew her mind had fully changed. Not because of the invisible signs he'd seen earlier, but because she was now showing visible, undeniable vulnerability and accountability. And here's the beautiful part. By that point, Marcus had grown so much that he wasn't desperate to take her back. He agreed to meet and talk, but he did so from a position of strength, not neediness. He set clear boundaries about what would need to change for him to even consider reconciliation. And because he approached it that way, they were able to have honest conversations about what went wrong and what would need to be different. They eventually did get back together, but it was a completely different dynamic. It was healthier, more balanced, more honest, and that only happened because Marcus recognized the invisible signs but didn't react to them. He let the process play out while focusing on his own growth. So here's what I want you to take away from this video. If you're seeing these 3 invisible signs, the pattern disruption, emotional leakage, and the phantom reach, it means your ex's mind is beginning to change. It means the no contact is working. It means your ex is starting to process the reality of losing you. But these signs are not an invitation to break no contact. They are not a signal that it's time to reach out. They're simply confirmation that you're on the right path. Your job is to stay the course. Maintain your boundaries. Continue focusing on your own healing and growth. Let your ex sit in the discomfort of your absence. Let them fully process what they've lost. And while they're doing that, you focus on becoming the best version of yourself. Not for them, but for you. Because ultimately, the goal of no contact isn't to manipulate your ex into wanting you back. The goal is to create space for both of you to gain clarity about what you really want. Sometimes that clarity leads to reconciliation. Sometimes it leads to you realizing you deserve better. Both outcomes are valuable because both outcomes move you forward. The invisible signs are just telling you that the process is working. But the real work, the important work, is happening inside you. So stop obsessing over what your ex is doing or thinking. Stop analyzing every little behavior. Trust that if your ex's mind is truly changing, it will eventually become visible. They will reach out with genuine vulnerability and accountability. And when that happens, you'll be in a position of strength to decide what you really want. Until then, focus on you. Build a life you're proud of. Become someone you're proud of. And trust that everything else will fall into place exactly as it should. If this video helped you today, make sure you're subscribed because I post new content every week on breakups, attraction, psychology, and building healthy relationships. And remember, you're not the backup plan. You're not the safety net. You're the prize. And it's time your ex realized that. Or it's time you found someone who already knows it.